The Avengers you've never heard of, and their chilling mission for vengeance. These Avengers weren't armed with high-tech suits or thunder-wielding hammers. They didn't come from a secret government agency or the pages of a comic book. But they did call themselves the Avengers. And they were very, very real. In the immediate aftermath of World War II, as much of Europe lay in ruins and the world tried to make sense of the horrors unleashed by the Nazi regime, a small, determined group of Jewish survivors banded together not to rebuild, but to exact revenge. Their mission? Hunt down Nazi war criminals and make them pay. Their real name was Nakam, the Hebrew word for revenge. But they would come to be remembered by a more dramatic title, the Avengers. Unlike the courtroom justice of the Nuremberg trials, the Avengers operated in the shadows. Their targets weren't just the architects of the Holocaust, but anyone who had carried out or enabled the genocide of 6 million Jews. They were fueled by grief, by rage, and by the gnawing knowledge that many of the men who had murdered their families were walking free, protected by bureaucracy, ignorance, or simply the chaos of a world trying to move on. One of the Avengers, Abba Kovner, had already become a legend in the Jewish resistance. During the war, he led a partisan group in the forests of Lithuania, sabotaging Nazi supply lines and fighting with everything from stolen weapons to homemade bombs. He was a poet, a soldier, and a man possessed by a singular purpose: to never let the world forget what had happened, or who had done it. But Kovner's idea of remembrance went far beyond memorials and testimony. He wanted action. He wanted retribution. Kovner assembled a group of about 50 men and women Holocaust survivors, former resistance fighters, and refugees who had lost everything. These were people who had nothing left to lose, and who refused to see the perpetrators of genocide fade into comfortable anonymity. They weren't looking for forgiveness. They weren't even looking for justice. They were looking for vengeance. Their most infamous operation was known as Plan A scheme so audacious, it sounds like something out of a spy thriller. The goal? To poison the water supply of several major German cities, including Hamburg, Munich, and Nuremberg, killing millions in a symbolic act of retribution for the 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust. Yes, you heard that right. Mass poisoning. Millions of deaths. Plan A was never carried out. Kovner traveled to British-occupied Palestine in early 1946 to secure support from the Haganah, the Jewish paramilitary organization. But British authorities intercepted him en route back to Europe. His ship was searched, the poison was found, and Kovner was arrested. He dumped his documents overboard before they could be seized. Without his leadership and resources, Plan A collapsed. But the Avengers weren't finished. What came next was Plan B, and this time, it was executed. The new plan targeted a more specific group: former SS officers and Nazi soldiers held as prisoners of war in Allied camps. The site they chose was Stalag 13, a detention center in Nuremberg housing thousands of captured SS troops. Posing as workers from a Jewish relief organization, the Avengers infiltrated the bakery that supplied bread to the camp. Then, using arsenic provided by sympathizers, they coated over 3,000 loaves of bread bound for the prisoners with a lethal dose of poison. On April 13, 1946, the bread was distributed. By morning, over 2,000 German prisoners were hospitalized with symptoms of poisoning. Official records confirmed 2,283 cases. Some reports claim hundreds died, though the exact number remains a mystery. The US military quickly clamped down on the story, and there are conflicting accounts on whether any fatalities were officially acknowledged. To this day, no one from the Avengers was ever arrested or brought to trial for the incident. It was as if they'd vanished ghosts from a war that had barely ended, operating between the lines of law and morality. And that's where the story gets even more complicated. Because depending on who you ask, the Avengers are either heroes or war criminals. To their supporters, they were justified. They struck back against a system that had murdered their people and then largely failed to hold the killers accountable. By 1946, many lower-ranking Nazis were already being released from custody, reintegrated into society, or recruited by Allied intelligence services under Operation Paperclip and other shadowy programs. Justice was not just slow, it was selective. But to others, the idea of mass retaliation, of poison and hidden vengeance, crossed a line. It blurred the very distinction between victim and perpetrator. Can one atrocity justify another? Can vengeance ever be clean? The Avengers never apologized. In fact, they believed the world owed them understanding, if not gratitude. Their actions were a message, spoken in a language the post-war world couldn't ignore, that Jewish blood was no longer cheap, that the days of silent suffering were over. Abba Kovner would go on to become one of Israel's most celebrated poets. He rarely spoke of the Avengers in public, but those who knew him said the fire never left him. The mission had failed, perhaps, but the message had been delivered. In recent years, the story of the Jewish Avengers has gained new attention. Documentaries, books, and academic studies have tried to piece together their shadowy history, sifting fact from myth. Some survivors who once feared speaking out have begun to share what they knew. Some say there are still members of Nakam alive today, old now, living quiet lives, carrying memories heavier than any medal or monument. And the question that lingers unanswered and perhaps unanswerable is whether they were right. Was revenge the only form of justice left to them? Or was it a warning to never let the world forget what happens when evil goes unpunished? You may know the Avengers as a band of superheroes, but long before Hollywood there was another group, flesh and blood, scarred and silent, who assembled not to save the world, but to avenge the dead. What do you think? Were they right to get revenge? Or do atrocities from World War II still linger through modern society today? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more historical mysteries, right here on Obscura Historia.